Welcome to OnCore Live and to our final webisode of 2021. We are really happy that you could be here with us today. I'm your host, Robin Bell, and we've got some great interviews coming up that will inform and inspire you in the coming year. Joining us now is Adam Valencic, our new sales director for Avery Dennison Performance Tapes North America. Welcome to OnCore Live, Adam. Hey, how are you settling into your new position?
Hey, thanks, Robin. Well, it's been 2.5 months now or so, it's starting to feel like home. It's
good.
a very complex business, so learning lots every day, but it's a fabulous team and a great business. So I'm just excited to be a part of it and excited to be here today. So thank you.
Yep, and we're glad that you're here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with Avery Dennison?
Sure. So I've been with Avery for about 13.5 years now. I started in what at the time was FASON, part of our label and packaging materials division. And I started as a technical customer service rep. So I've kind of worked my way up through the commercial organization, inside sales, outside sales, led a couple different teams with regional, key accounts, and ultimately our regional-based field sales organization. And from there, I got the opportunity to move into our fastener business, which was completely different. Injection molded plastic, highly engineered zip ties, basically, is how I would describe it. Sold into the automotive OEMs and tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. And that really got me acquainted with the division that Performance Tapes is a part of. And this opportunity came up a few months back, and here I am. So it's been a fun ride, and continues to be new and different challenges every year.
And I see I'm forecasting a lot more fun for you. So with your experience and perspective, which industries and segment growth opportunities do you think that our converters should be aware of as we head into 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one that comes to mind is near and dear to my heart from that last role I had in the automotive space, and that's EV batteries. I mean, nearly every OEM has announced some kind of investment in domestic battery manufacturing, and it's in its infancy. It's still a single-digit percentage of electric vehicles versus internal combustion engines. So it's a really great time to get in at the ground level in a space that's, I think, going to be pretty huge. I think everybody kind of agrees on the future of automotive being electric. We can argue and debate the time frame, but it's got sort of a defined direction. And in automotive in particular, if you've ever tried to break into it when you're not an automotive supplier, it's tough. So this is a really neat opportunity for us and for our customers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I would say the other large area, or I'll say one of the other areas, is just around some of the core businesses of our customers, white goods, building and construction, automotive packaging. There's still so much pent up demand. And a lot of that, I think, just driven by some of the supply chain issues we've had, but there's still a lot of demand out there that I think is going to carry over into next year, which is excellent for our customers because it's kind of their core business in a lot of cases. But beyond that, the other thing that I would encourage people to think about, that we're starting to think about a little bit here, is this infrastructure bill. I mean, you've got $1.2 trillion of cash being infused into the economy, essentially. And I think it's easy to think infrastructure, roads, bridges, but there's literally more to it in terms of, EV chargers, public transportation, broadband, power and water grids. But then, aside from just some of those items that certainly have, pressure sensitive tapes and PSA materials in them, there's that whole value chain of what goes into making all of those things. And I just would encourage everybody on this call to try to peel back that onion a little bit and think about where some of the opportunity is going to come from, because it's a lot of money and kind of a once in a generation investment from our government that's going to be up for grabs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of potential for opportunities there. So now what about challenges? What are some of the challenges that our industry is going to face in 2022?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of them are going to be similar to what we've been facing this year. Supply chain and inflation being the first. Nothing has really changed there for us. I'd say in the last 6 months or so, it's still very difficult from a supply chain perspective, facing longer lead times, limited materials, all sorts of different challenges related to transportation. And then you've got this inflationary piece too, that some of our other presenters touched on, that I think is really important for anybody in business just to keep an eye on, because costs are going up. And I think gone are the days of being able to sign up for, multi-year price locks and things like that. And if you are in a space that requires that, I think we've got to be thinking about, how do we kind of diversify and try to protect ourselves from that to remain healthy in what's a pretty dynamic and challenging environment from an inflation standpoint.
Yeah.
Beyond that, labor, and I'd say not just the availability of labor, and I mean, at Avery Dennison in particular, I think we've found some interesting ways to be able to attract and retain talent. But then we're still in this kind of COVID, post-COVID, still COVID world, depending on how you define it, where it's not unusual to have a shift that at a production level that somebody has COVID or multiple people have COVID or people have to stay home and quarantine. So you've got kind of that added effect to what's already a very tight labor market that I think is going to continue to be an issue for some time to come. And the last piece I'd mention here related to this, and I think this is a challenge and an opportunity, honestly, and it's something we've done a lot of, and I thought I'd share with the group just because at a large company level, I think it might be a little bit more routine, but as you get smaller, I don't know if it's as commonplace, and that's scenario planning. And it's something when you approach, this is a good time of the year, when you approach 2022, for example, thinking about the 3-4 different ways that year might go for you and what you would do in each of those scenarios. And you're leading a stressed out team in a very dynamic environment. And I think for us that's helped a little bit with some of the pressure, and you feel like you've got a plan. And if something goes left, you've got a plan to go left, and you pivot accordingly. So something I encourage everybody to take a look at and think about.
And being flexible, I think, that's all part of the equation, right? So supply chain issues, we talked about that. They're definitely a challenge across all industries. Can you tell us a bit more about what Avery Dennison's been doing to help converters navigate this supply chain challenge?
Sure. So, I mean, first and foremost, and we say this a lot, but leveraging our global scale and our global spend. So when you get into force majeures, allocations, longer lead times, things like that, your total spend and your global relationships can really make the difference. And I think it's something our procurement team has done a great job at. And I mention it because I think it's an underappreciated function, right? Because for our customers who are on this call, it doesn't feel like they're doing a great job probably. Orders are still delayed, lead times are still longer than you're used to or than you'd like, but there's a monumental amount of effort behind the scenes just to get us where we are now. And if it wasn't for those efforts, if you can believe it, things would be worse. So, I mean, that's the first step and a lever we always pull right away. Beyond that, there's a couple of exciting things that have happened. One, we acquired JDC earlier this year down in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and that's going to bring on some capacity over time. And I think it's a mix of customers there, right? That some of them are new to Avery Dennison that kind of came with the acquisition, and some of them are existing customers that bought from that facility as well. But over time, they did business a little bit differently than we did at the legacy Avery Dennison facilities. But over time, it's going to make a difference, I think, through this acquisition, and we're going to be better positioned to better service our customers and grow the business. I'll say if anybody's on the call who's buying product from there, again, it probably doesn't feel that way right now, because if anybody's gone through an acquisition, it's a bit of a process. But I'm excited about the future of that facility and our business and our new customers that came along with it. So that's going to bring a lot of exciting exciting opportunity down the road. And then lastly, as pictured here on the screen, we broke ground about a month ago on a state-of-the-art coating asset in our Painesville, Ohio facility, which is awesome. I mean, that's going to add capacity probably late 2022, early 2023, depending on building material delays, but a very exciting piece to the overall growth strategy that will help with a lot of this over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly will. So what are some of the goals and the projects that you and your team are going to be working on in the next year, 2022?
Sure. So, I mean, I would say, I'd preface this by saying, as an organization, there's a lot of different projects and initiatives that the teams are working on relative to some of these challenges we just talked about. But for my team in particular, the sales organization, there's a couple key things I guess I would highlight. You know, first and foremost, we're always focused on growth, right? We're in sales. So some of these new growth initiatives like the EV battery, we've got some product specific initiatives that are sort of standard, partnering with our marketing team to push a few different areas where we think we can add value. But the other area aside from that is just around, this is a big one for me, it's around adapting and kind of flourishing in this new environment we're in. You know, I don't think I knew what a Zoom call was 3 years ago, and here I am in front of all of you on a Zoom call. Yeah, exactly. None of us did. But I get the sense that we're at a bit of an inflection point in business. And I guess I would say, as a kid growing up, I had a salesperson father, and we would stop at the payphone, and he'd put his quarters in, he'd call his voicemail, he'd get his calls, he'd call his customers back, and that was kind of the way you did business. And then I think of when cell phones came along and when email came along, how the expectations changed. And I think the pandemic has done that through just the way we communicate and a different way of doing business. And I mean, sure, we're going to get back out on the road. We already are a little bit, and very excited to do that, believe me. But I think a lot of the Zoom calls and the way we conduct business today are kind of here to stay. So for me and my team, that's going to be a big part of it, is just making sure that we've got those muscles to be able to flourish in that environment. And I think the things, even from a data standpoint, there's an awful lot of data that I think we all have access to, and gone are the days of sitting with a customer and going through a spreadsheet line by line. That's not a reality that we get the opportunity to experience very often anymore. So now you're on a Zoom call, you've got a big group of different people on there, and you've got to be adept at preparing the right information, presenting it in the right way to add value quickly, effectively on a small screen that gets you to the same outcomes for you and your customer that you need to get at. So, that's a big piece. And then I'd say the secondarily piece of that is just the virtual, engagement or skill set in general. So there's some cool opportunities that come with Zoom. We can bring a lot of experts. We're seeing it today that you normally wouldn't have with you. So that's the exciting part from a sales standpoint, is we can beam people in from around the world who have expertise in certain areas, but it's still an art and a process over a Zoom call, just like it is in an in-person sales call. So it's a lot of sharing best practices, just staying up to speed on that stuff, and just making sure that we're as adept and prepared as we can be.
Yeah, we're in a hybrid way of living, but it's continuing to grow and to learn. We fall down, we get back up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, thank you for all this information that you gave us and for spending time with us. This was a meaningful and a really insightful interview. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
There's more from Adam online, so be sure to check out his Q&A article at tapes.averydennison.com. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for joining us. From all of us here at OnCore Live, we want to wish you and your families all the joys of the holiday season and a very happy new year.